How does Sayl the Faithless pull the strings in Ties of Torment? First, let's throw up the end of Sayl's journey, the unique trait he gets from doing the Dark Ritual. This is a Caster Lord, and he becomes a Super Caster Lord as a result of that anti-hero's journey. Let's see how the self-made seer gets there. Let's lift the Veil of Shadows over Sayl the Faithless. What we want here is how to dive into his campaign and not make the sorts of mistakes I did my first time. Hence, my What I Wish I Knew video. So, nitty-gritty, how does this differ from the others? Since Sayl doesn't do Monogod altars, he can't boost them with marauding actions. And yes, I put this at the start because it is bad for you to miss this. Sayl gets access to 2 marauding actions in the province menu to replace the one that he lost. I'll cover the second first. For 100 spoils, Profanity, worse than mere bad language, grants 5 turns of spell intensity plus 30% for your spellcasters in that province, cooldown for all spells minus 25%, and Winds of Magic Reserve plus 10 per turn. It's pretty powerful, but locks out other actions. Listed first, Subterfuge takes 100 spoils, 5 turns of enemy spells costing plus 25% more wins per spell, making them run out of juice faster, and miscast chance plus 15% for enemy characters. Ho-hum, that's not such a big deal. But wait! For each manipulations used during that time, effects in that province are an additional miscast chance plus 15% for enemy characters. Units recruited in this province have a permanent plus 4% melee attack, a maximum of plus 16 melee attack when recruited, and plus 4 armor bonus, maximum plus 16 armor. Since this sounds like potential inconsistencies, I tried to test in-game, recruiting 3 units as a baseline, namely Marauder Hunters, Ice Trolls, and regular Trolls. I cancel, I do a manipulation, and re-recruit. In Drifts and Drabs, the melee attack was visibly rising, and when I had 3 manipulations running, and when I tried this to make sure, I was getting a Norscan Giant from melee attack 66 to 74, and armor from 50 to 62. So the entry checks out. That was with 3 manipulations rather than the 4, that is the max for benefits. What I found out during this testing is that there seems to be a global cooldown to both of these special Sayl actions. They cannot be reused not only until a particular province's Marauder actions run out, but that one runs out globally. Well, it's pretty powerful, so let's concede and move forward. And that was at the time. If something changes, well, so be it. Also, I checked just to check, but the subterfuge benefits do not apply to global recruitment units. They only benefit local recruitment in the province, so if that's the part you're hoping to make use of, make sure to do it somewhere you have the slots, like where you have a Henge of Totems building, or lots of ports, or both. Before touching on manipulations, which is important stuff, let's look at the Chaos Undivided altars themselves. Sayl gets a tech to add a new special trick to them, but it's only one thing. Sayl's altars have 3 tiers of growth, but the additional buildings only have the usual 2 tiers. Main buildings each add a single point to your Dark Ritual level, with thresholds to cross at the 4, 10, 18, and 13 mark, with an associated quest battle, without which you can't reap the benefits for the altars. There are benefits that you can get even before the battle, but the altar ones are locked. Remember, Sayl's legendary item battle is hard as nails without a good army. The Dark Ritual related ones can be considerably more lenient, but by no means milk runs. A lot else looks normal at tier 1. Control plus 2 can drop off pillaging spoils, income 50 per turn, spoils plus 3 per turn, chaos corruption plus 2. The special sauce starts with Sayl steals plus 5% of the experience gained by lords in this and adjacent regions, all armies. I'm not even sure they have to be your lords. Also, research rate plus 2 points, which is nice because you do not get access to Tzeentch Altar Cheese. The tech, by the way, provides spell intensity plus 10% for your armies in adjacent provinces. This doesn't increase, but it's a nice luxury. As in, it's not something you should consider essential, but it is nice. Dark Ritual completed would make even tier 1 altars give plus 1 reserve capacity for all armies faction-wide, and since you can't even fight that battle with under 30 of these, nice. The garrison is absolutely the same as usual. Tier 2 differs in that it gives income 75, sales steals plus 7% of Lord XP, research rate plus 3 points instead, spoils plus 6 per turn, corruption plus 3, and friendly winds of magic capacity is plus 10 points for local and adjacent regions. Sayl's third tier offers control plus 3, income 150 gold, spoils plus 10 per turn, Sayl steals plus 9% of experience points, research plus 4 points, corruption plus 4, wins capacity plus 15 in local and adjacent regions. The Dark Ritual completion stuff hasn't changed, and the garrison did not get better. Now, I've had Sayl in a province with 4 of these altars, and at that point, yes, it does really start stacking up. I believe that the cap is 250 based on my experience. It's a lot better than usual, that's plenty. While most buildings past this are the same, Mock God is so fundamentally different, we need to focus on it first. Mock God grants a garrison of 1 Chaos Warriors with great weapons and 1 Chaos Spawn, regular undivided varieties, which is not radical. But it enables recruitment of 2 Spawn max and 2 of each type of Chaos Warriors max. Vanilla varieties, sure, but these spawn are 1-turn recruitment varieties. This is a kind of big deal campaign-wise. This building, just by existing, expands local recruitment slots plus 1, a big deal for landlocked Norscan provinces, like the one Sayl starts in. From here, we have interesting benefits from cleared levels of Dark Ritual. Tier 1 gives unit experience gain plus 10% for these vanilla undivided units faction-wide. That's going to stack, right? So right away, that's terrifying levels of experience gain without babysitting. Tier 2 gives melee defense plus 1 for these chaos units faction-wide. Tier 3 gives melee attack plus 1 for the same units faction-wide per Mock God. Tier 4 gives upkeep minus 4% faction-wide. So yeah, these are meant to stack and stack and stack, which is good because you can't redline skill boost them ever. Creeping Morass, our undivided counterpart to Warhound Barrow, grants enemy movement range minus 10% adjacent regions, your army's campaign movement range plus 10% local province, casualty replenishment rate plus 5% local province, and corruption plus 3. When corruption is 50 or higher, enemy armies in adjacent regions start siege battles in a tired state. I imagine, unless they have perfect vigor, right? I haven't checked that. Even if so, they would never lose fatigue further, I suppose. Did I misread, or was something weird in the big buildings video? Ravager Kern, hope my pronunciation improved, at 75 corruption and up gives plus 5% to income for your buildings in adjacent regions. If instead you pick Glowering Tavern, this gives your armies in adjacent provinces post-battle loot plus 10%, income from raiding plus 20%, corruption plus 3 in adjacent regions, leadership minus 10 to enemy armies in adjacent regions, and if corruption is 50 or more, your armies in adjacent regions will be unbreakable in siege battles. I mean, niche, but that's kind of cracked, isn't it? So let's go over the Dark Ritual stage benefits briefly. When you read these, the benefits below the dividing line only kick in after you defeat the special army, and you can't challenge that army until you get the appropriate altar level, so TLDR, get 4 altars or you are stuck for a long time. But the benefits above the lines are granted from just the number of altars, and crucially this means that unit caps rise even before you do the battles. For Tier 1, you get weapon strength plus 5% for all armies, which is subtle, but someone's going to feel it every time one of your boys swings an axe. Spawn capacity increases by 3, each type of Chaos Warrior, of which there are 3, increases by 2 capacity each. So to be clear, you start with capacity of spawn of 2. So it's 5 spawn at this point, and then 4 of each type of Chaos Warrior vanilla. Tier 2 jacks the weapon strength to plus 10%, and the cap increases to plus 6 for spawn, plus 4 for the others, so 8 total spawn, 6 total for each of the Chaos Warrior types. You'll also get a special dilemma for one of the 2 special champion lords. So that's very nice because you don't have the monogod altars to get them, but you can get one through achieving this level and just picking one. Tier 3 will get weapon strength plus 15% for all armies, spawn plus 9 cap for 11 total, warriors plus 6 cap for 8 each type, and the dilemma this time is for a legendary hero. That is, of the 2 heroes that you can get that are champions of the gods, the dark gods, the fun gods. The final tier, there's no battle that's a part of the tier because there's only the final one for the Dark Ritual. Gets you weapon strength plus 20% for all armies, horrible regeneration for the spawn, berserk for the Chaos Warriors and the spawn, just like the altar system ones, and capacity is plus 12 spawn, plus 8 warriors, so maximum 14 spawn, maximum of 10 of each type of Chaos Warriors faction-wide. That is your peak for those units specifically. But keep in mind, they're one-turn recruit all. Benefits in the tech tree to global, and you'll be able to grab them much more easily than otherwise, and probably a lot more easily than Marauder champions. For the battles themselves, I don't want to spoil much, but basically if you bring Borrowed Artillery or the Hell Cannon Regiment of Renown, the Iceforged Legion, because it's awesome. 3 of the 4 battles have enemy reinforcements coming from awkward locations, so either don't be a legendary tryhard or plan for it better somehow. Between these and the Hunt battles, I feel like the tuning of this campaign has provided proper challenges while being completely insane. The legendary item battle is in another realm for that. If you actually want the staff, that is. Now, let's take a look at manipulations. As I alluded to briefly in my What I Wish I Knew video, this is a buy now, pay with your soul later kind of system. Each action attracts a varying number of attention of the gods because there's a random range. But until you reach a level of attention coming on you, it's free. No resources, nothing, free. But each has its own independent cooldown. 5 to start with for the little ones, Sayl gets to shorten that by 1 later. The issue is that there's a maximum. Attention of the gods creates more and more problems as you go, ranging from mild nuisance to a lot bigger. What seems to be the case is that when you lay off for the number of turns listed with the eye, and after more double checking, here's how it works. When you get to the point where the attention from the gods is going to come down, it has to have stayed at the minimum of that tier in order to go down to the bottom of the previous tier, meaning that if it's at 5, it will go back to 0. If it's at 10, it will go back to 8. If you put it at 15, it will go back to 8. It will not go back down to 0 unless you've maxed it out, anger the gods to the point they send a real army after you, and then it goes down to 0 when the time period comes up. So in order to really get the heat off of you, you have to not just reach the end of one period, you have to not touch the manipulations at all until the end of that period, which would be 8 turns. But if you max the thing out, you'll be barred from further manipulations until the timer goes down and the heat wears off. Now, I feel that this is manageable overall, and the endgame stuff is so crazy you really do need a limit on it. But 1, you might be able to fight a few extra armies during a slow period. 2, if you're not using them at all, you are absolutely missing out. I'm producing this video after 131 turns in Sayl's campaign, which is too long if I actually knew what I was doing to get to the end. But my point is that I pushed through a lot so I could get a lot of details here. Still, correct me if I get anything wrong. I accept that, I welcome it. We'll start with the Tier 1 manipulations available before you clear your first altar battle. But I have to say, they're starting you small. Tier 2 has such godly stuff, you want to get there ASAP. My first campaign, I was making up for lost time after. We begin with Sight Beyond Sight, and honestly this is one of the best ones, regardless, because it instantly gives you complete visibility over all the locations, regions, and armies, unless they're in ambush. I do not think it covers anything in ambush. Hero action success chance against that faction's characters get a plus 30% bonus, and their ambush defense chance is minus 30% for all armies. Now, Sayl is not the best ambushing lord. If he was, my early game would have been a lot smoother, so don't overestimate this, you're not Skarsnik. But still, being able to plan your blitzkrieg is amazing. Twisted Tribute is really something for the fact you can dish it out every 5 turns. Without diplomatic consequences that I've noticed, you get spoils plus 250, do not pass go, Target region gets minus 80% income, so this is to annoy Lothern, and you acquire a random rare magical item. I have special luck that makes the game want to shower me with Executioner's Axes. Allied and neutral settlements apply too. Fear and Fatigue gives in-battle Tired and Leadership minus 6 to a chosen army for 2 turns. It doesn't have to be an enemy. This is not that powerful, and I would only consider it for powering up that Marauder action from earlier unless it's a gripping need. On the other hand, honestly, reducing Orc Laborer morale even further is kind of funny. Gather Winds gives a friendly army minus 25% cooldown to all spells, and has other armies in that province donate 25% other wins above the minimum, at least I think that's how it is, to the lord that has been indicated. It doesn't actually say that they have to be enemy lords, but anyway. The cooldown is rock solid reliable, and is probably something that you want active before taking on some of the harder battles, because there's not a whole lot of these manipulations that actually help you in battle. Here too, we start to see some serious stuff come online. Let's go straight to the treasury buildings you enable by using the manipulation, because if I don't list it, you may skip over it, and that would be a crying shame. But as we get to that, a very important issue. This can be used on allied, neutral, and enemy, and no, only on allies and neutrals. You cannot use this on pre-existing enemies. Remember that when your ally seduces you with money to suck you into their wars, you may be hurting yourself by preventing you from being properly prepared. Subterfuge buildings. The main treachery building gives us nothing until we build it into something additional, but when I got around to it, there was no money cost involved, only turns, and it's 2 turns in these cases. The first building, False Interactions, immunizes you from diplomatic penalties for trespassing. Raiding may annoy them though, but it'll annoy them less than doing that and trespassing. Recruitment cost goes down by 50%. You may be wondering, wait, what? It's an enemy province, but global recruitment duration is minus 2 turns with this active. So you can mass recruit in global on an enemy's doorstep and they won't even care, basically. Or not enough. And I say that because you would have to be in a raiding camp to be doing that. If you then capture that settlement, all enemy armies in local and adjacent regions have very tired status in battle for 3 whole turns. And the treachery will spread to enemy settlements neighboring this one with their own fresh cooldowns. Now that should be enemy settlements of the same faction. Normally these are on a 5-turn timer, but this extends time until discovery by 1 turn just by building the extra building stuff. It's like a coupon. Keys to the Coffers, the second version, also immunizes you from diplomatic penalties from trespassing, gets you 100 gold cash per turn, which is a nice little bonus. Construction cost minus 5% for all buildings faction-wide. I imagine that includes buildings that take spoils, because I've seen that effect before. And when you capture it, if the main building is under Tier 3, it gives you a Tier 3 main settlement building instantly. It also spreads this treachery to neighboring provinces, and like the other one, extends discovery time by 1 turn, just like before. Malevolent Sustenance gives the same diplomatic immunity, enables casualty replenishment in foreign territory, so everyone is Wolfric now. And on top of that, replenishment plus 20% per turn. When this settlement is captured, plus 25 corruption instantly in this province and in adjacent provinces, and the treachery spreads, and plus 1 to the discovery time. Clearly this is meant as a can opener when you're blitzing an order faction. The second building requires 1 turn and 750 gold in each case. Well, being able to get this up and running so fast is worth gold. Shadow Paths provides vanguard deployment for all units in your armies in that region, speed plus 15% for all armies in that region, ammunition minus 15% for enemy armies, so take that Cathay. When you capture it, enemy army movement range is minus 15% for 2 turns if they're in that region, and the treachery spreads to neighboring settlements of that enemy faction. Barriers and Breaches gives campaign movement range minus 25% to enemy armies in local region while this building is up, and plus 5 chaos corruption during that time. But it says when you capture the settlement, it inflicts 25% of total garrison health casualties to local garrison, and the treachery spreads. If it didn't spread, this would not be worth much if you had already captured the place. So it is meant as a daisy chain against garrisons. Corrosive Influence gives plus 5% weapon strength to you in local region, enemy melee attack minus 10 in local region, enemy melee defense minus 10 in local region as well. When you capture the settlement, it disables all casualty replenishment by enemy armies in local and adjacent regions for 2 turns, and the treachery spreads. So, from my explanation, I'm sure you see exactly how this is meant, like a customizable Skaven Plague that spreads when you take the place over, and only hurts the enemy, and if you keep blitzing, you keep backstabbing. That ends the Treachery buildings. So, the rest of Tier 2. What do we have here? Crippling Injunction. Apparently, it forbids the entire enemy faction from recruiting units, locally or globally, for 2 turns. Wait, what? Let's say you just crushed a legendary lord, and the enemy wants to recruit every regiment of renown it hadn't bothered with before as a stopgap emergency army. Now it can't do that for 2 turns while you bear down on the faction's capital. The potential to put a faction away like this is incredible. Rest from the wicked. For 2 turns, that army's campaign movement is disabled, and battle reinforcement time, well, it's not completely forbidden, but it's plus 500% reinforcement time. Aside from the grinding annoyance it would be to win a battle in the first minute and wait 10 minutes for the rest of the enemy to show up, which probably won't work because everybody else fled already. That's a legendary lord murder machine. No wonder default cooldown is 10 turns now. Bloody Promises instantly completes 1 turn of ongoing local and global recruitment. That is, you know how they always say, reduce blah blah recruitment time by 1 turn but never below 1? This reduces it from 1 to 0, and you get those units now. So yeah, kind of powerful. Although mostly powerful on things that would have 1 turn recruitment. If it's 3 turns or 4 turns, well, your mileage will vary. For Tier 3, we start really seeing the craziness. Torn Treaties is like the ultimate jealous girlfriend scaled up. For the duration, not only does the target break all existing treaties regardless of the consequences, but cannot have any diplomacy, be it for peace treaties or otherwise, with any faction except Sayl. Now, I have to note that even though people say war is a treaty, it does not cancel wars. It only cancels everything else. So, however, there is one type it doesn't touch. It doesn't touch vassal treaties. Vigorous Word goes up to a target region, preferably a major settlement, instantly creates wall breaches, depletes 50% of the settlement garrison's health, but it's uneven. It will affect some more than others, and drops settlement garrison leadership by 20, not confined to enemy factions. At least, they're not your enemies yet. Not formally. I checked, this will not damage a proper army that happens to be stationed in the city. Only its actual garrison. It still helps, especially if it's a big Tier 5 settlement. Exploit Your Rivals hits a single army of any other faction and shaves 20% of its health off immediately, causes attrition for 3 turns even if immune to attrition, which is powerful. No idea if reduction of attrition helps, and ammunition minus 100%. So, barring restock, it's gone! It's all gone! Demonic Summoning lets you sacrifice a single Marauder infantry unit on land, not at sea, and summon a greater demon. It doesn't specify beyond that, because what infantry unit is sacrificed is random, so long as that army has one. What kind of demon you get is also random, but for perspective, when I tried it, I got a Bloodthirster the first time, so expect demonic units of that tier. The second time I got a Great Unclean one, and I'll put the stats up so that you see what's going on here. And they're not characters, they are units. Also, that Bloodthirster was significantly buffed in several areas, just like this Great Unclean one I'm showing, and this was a lord that I was lazy with, so he had 0 pips in redline skills past the first. Also, he was a death caster, but anyway. The point is, redline skills were not skewing this, so it's either an inherent buff or is somehow linked to the altars. Since it's a benefit, I'm not going to worry my pretty head about which one it is in the long haul. So the Sayl tech involved with this reduces these particular cooldowns from 15 turns to 13, tier 4 ones that follow from 20 turns to 18. Reductions are as the game explains. For tier 4, Blind War has a 5-turn duration. The faction declares war against all factions it knows, totally including you, but you're the only party who can make peace with the faction during that duration. If you want to, of course. Also, all provinces of the affected faction gets minus 50 control. I tried this in Call of France. He was at war with like 25 factions after, including Lothern and Karazakarak. Good times. Weekend reality lasts 10 turns. The target settlement is razed, it's simply gone, magically nuked into non-existence, and cannot be recolonized during the 10-turn duration. Also corruption plus 20 where you did this, because you left a mark. Mutinous Whispers instantly wounds the lords and heroes of an enemy army, and the lord is replaced by a Great Shaman Sorcerer, leading the remainder of the army as a rebel force against the faction it was previously fighting for. Aside from one-shotting hero doom stacks, yeah, this could be inconvenient for the enemy, and you don't have to pay upkeep. I found an Empire army with 4 land ships and several steam tanks and did this to them. It indeed mutinied and became a neutral army. Lives Become Flesh gives the targeted army the ability to summon a Shaman Sorcerer hero mid-battle who has a random lore and adds 10 units in that army which will stay for the 5-turn duration. What units? I have no idea. So I tested this to complete the script, and what happened, these 10 units included a smattering of infantry, some other filler, and a few Chaos Frost Dragons, so your variety is rather large. Moreover, these units were attached to the army like a Throg Wah. They did not take up any of the 19 unit slots of a Lord-only army I used to test. Fascinating. So those 10 units will stay for the duration of the manipulation, which is 5 turns. And that wraps up what the manipulations themselves do. Now, this is a lot of power, but of course you're going to court the attention of the gods by using the stuff, and if you do nothing with them, the attention goes down. Early testing showed that armies summoned came after Sayl personally, but that wasn't true at all when I really annoyed the gods. I had a Tzeentch force full of burning chariots and lords of change, and virtually nothing besides single entities. They took a city, stayed while slowly recruiting, and that's where my test ended. Now this was when I maxed attention of the gods. When you do this, the next time the attention falls, it will go from 32 to 0. This should be paired with knowledge of the very powerful Tzeentch army I just mentioned, since the timer itself is on a fixed turn schedule. This is CA encouraging you to shamelessly manipulate this in your favor, and if you must anger the gods like that, doing it just before their attention wanders somewhere else is a good plan if it comes to that. Alternatively, you can use manipulations only when you really need them. But you want to use them because if you don't, it's a real waste. It's far too much to add to this video, but over the long haul I've learned that the monstrous Arcanum hunts can do a great job of filling dead space in your campaign, adding battles, experience, and money, among other benefits. Sayl need not depend on manipulations alone, and like the other Shaman Lords, who get their mammoths a lot later than he does, he can boost Arcanum monsters in his skill tree. So let's take a brief final look at his personal trait, the Wind's Right. Sayl gets plus 40% spell targeting range, and remember, this guy has Thunderbolt 2. That's really good for spellcasting. Winds on hand plus 5 per turn is pure gravy. Miscast chance minus 25% is on top of other sources, making him all but immune to miscast. Greater Arcane Conduit not only grants plus 60% winds recharge in battle, but also the added spell intensity from it, and that's on top of other sources thereof, including the Cathade Defeat trait I gushed about in prior videos for more spellcasters, meaning more spell intensity, and he loses the regular Arcane Conduit, no loss there. Remember that each altar now provides a small bonus, as in +1, to total winds reserve, which adds up with all the altars he needed to even do the Dark Ritual to begin with. It's the end of a long journey, and I found it very satisfying. So, that's how Sayl's mechanics work. You just have to deal with the pesky gods as you go along, right? If, despite my best efforts, something was missed or inadequate, I am only human, but your support is a great deal of help, so feel free to make comments. I warmly welcome them. And usually I let text do this, but please like, subscribe, and the comments are great, but lurkers are welcome always. Take care and have fun conning the entire old world.